Ace Frehley's flaming guitar and Ozzy Osbourne's harmonica changed a paralyzed fan's life. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't supposed to be on the third floor of Cedars-Sinai that afternoon, but fate, like rock and roll, never follows the schedule. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and the Prince of Darkness stepped out alone, blinking at a row of identical beige corridors and humming fluorescent lights. For a moment, he just stood there. White walls, polished floors, nurses in motion. No sign of where he was supposed to be. "Oh, bloody hell," Ozzy muttered. "Before we start this story, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if powerful rock stories touch your soul, hit subscribe to Voices of Darkness and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love Ozzy Osbourne, stay to the end, share this video and prove it." Ozzy squinted at a direction board. Cardiology, neurology, rehab. "Which one of you is the right bloody one?" he grumbled, bringing his phone to his ear. On the other end, Sophie's voice came in brisk and controlled. "Ozzy, you got off on the wrong floor again. You were supposed to go to 2, not 3. Just get back in the elevator and—" Yeah, hang on," he said, waving at a nurse and receiving a polite, vaguely panicked smile. "They all look the same, love. White walls, tired faces. It's like being trapped in a snowstorm with paperwork. Just turn around. Go back to the elevators." Ozzy turned. Something caught his eye. Room 347. On the wall beside the door hung a massive poster of a spaceman in iconic makeup. Silver suit, purple and blue galaxies exploding behind him. The familiar starburst, the electric aura of a man who turned stage lights into another universe. Ace Frehley. Ozzy froze. His feet moved before his brain gave permission. "Ozzy?" Sophie said. "Are you moving?" "Yeah," he whispered. "I'm moving." He hung up without explaining and stepped through the open door of room 347. Room 347A at first. It felt like he'd walked into the wrong timeline. The room didn't look like a hospital room. Not really. Sure, there was the standard bed, wires, IV stand, the steady digital beep of monitors. But the walls, what little white remained, were swallowed by posters. Kiss, Black Sabbath. Led Zeppelin. A tattered tour laminate from a Sabbath reunion. A framed photo of Ace in full makeup, mid-leap. A Black Sabbath vinyl sleeve nailed above the bed like a relic. A homemade banner. The Voltage Boys in jagged letters. In front of the window, in a wheelchair, sat a young man with long brown hair tied loosely at the back. 23, maybe 24. His body was still. His hands lay quietly in his lap, fingers thin and rigid. His eyes were turned to the TV on mute, but his soul was fixed somewhere else. He didn't see Ozzy at first. Ozzy took one step inside. The faint scent of antiseptic mixed with something warmer. Old leather. Paper, the ghost of cigarette smoke embedded in. Posters smuggled through time. Then, the young man's eyes flicked over and froze. His whole body didn't move, but his face did. His mouth fell. Open, his eyes went wide. "No," he whispered. "No way," Ozzy blinked. "You, Ethan?" Silence, the boy swallowed. You're Ozzy Osbourne," Ozzy shrugged. "Last time I checked." For a moment, Ethan Cross forgot his pain. His chair, the beeping machines. The air trembled with that strange charge that only happens when the impossible walks through a very ordinary doorway. What are you doing here?" Ethan stammered. "Is this some kind of Make-A-Wish prank? Are there cameras?" He looked around, panicked, heart racing. "No cameras," Ozzy said gently. "Just got lost." Ethan laughed once, disbelieving. And then the laugh broke halfway into something raw. Lost. Of course, because that was his word too. Love for a spaceman. Ozzy took a slow look around, soaking in the room. "You like heavy," Ozzy said, nodding at the Sabbath vinyl. "I live because of heavy," Ethan replied, the words slipping out without filter. "But Ace," his eyes went to the giant poster. "Ace Frehley is the reason any of this," he nodded at the walls, "exists." Ozzy moved closer. No rush. Something in him recognized something in Ethan. That familiar mix of worship and heartbreak. "How's that then?" Ozzy asked. Ethan licked his lips. I don't know. 10, 11? He began. "My uncle showed me Kiss for the first time. There was Ace, this cosmic alien with a guitar like a spaceship firing lasers. I'd never seen anyone look like that, sound like that. It wasn't just music. It was escape. A door out of everything. His voice steadied as he spoke, as if each word rebuilt a version of himself. I begged for a guitar.
Saved money.
Mowed lawns. Sold my Xbox. Got this ugly second-hand Strat knockoff. The neck was warped. The pickups buzzed. But it was mine. I played until my fingers bled. Even when my parents said, get a real job plan. Even when neighbors complained. Ozzy smiled faintly. He'd heard this story 1,000 ways in 1,000 faces. What did you play? Ozzy asked. Bad covers, Ethan said with a ghost of a grin. Worse tone. But I kept going. Started a band. Don't laugh at the name. I make no promises, Ozzy said. We called ourselves the Voltage Boys, Ethan admitted. Ozzy pointed at the banner. Looks like a band that blows fuses and forgets to tune. I like it. Ethan's eyes watered, not from pain but from being understood. We got decent, he said. Dive bars, school gyms, little festivals. I wasn't Ace, I wasn't Tony. But for a few songs under red lights with smoke machines we couldn't afford, I felt like I belonged on a stage. Ozzy turned his head. In the corner, half hidden by a chair, was an old blue Fender Stratocaster. Dust lay thick along its neck. Cobwebs clung between its strings like abandoned notes. Ozzy walked toward it. Ethan's voice faltered. Don't, he said quietly. Ozzy stopped. The night everything stopped. Ethan stared at the guitar like it was a headstone. 18 months ago, he began. We got our biggest shot yet. An opening slot at a proper festival. It wasn't Madison Square Garden or anything, but it was big enough that my mom actually asked what time we went on. A faint laugh. It died quickly. I was there all day. Running cables. Helping move rigs. The crew was late. Someone was rushing. Someone forgot a pin. We were under the stage structure, and I was lining up my amp when I heard someone shout. He paused. His hands twitched like his body remembered exactly where he'd been. I looked up. The metal platform above wasn't locked. The wind hit. It swung. He exhaled slowly, eyes glazing. It came down on me before I even understood. Spine, nerves, bones, then ceiling lights, then sirens, then white rooms like this one. And then, his eyes dropped to his hands. They told me I might never walk again. A beat, that I'd lose most of the control in my fingers. Another beat. That guitar was over. No tears. No dramatic sobbing. Just a hollow silence so heavy that even the heart monitor seemed to hesitate. Ozzy walked to the blue Strat, gently lifted it. Dust floated in the stale air like the ghosts of old solos. He brushed the strings with his thumb. They gave off a tired, rusty jangle. This the one? Ozzy asked. Ethan nodded. That's the last guitar I ever played standing up, he said. Last one I held when my hands still felt like mine. I played 4 notes that night in the rehearsal room. I never made it to the stage. 4 notes, a life cut between the 3rd and the 4th. The soul doesn't retire. Ozzy sat on the visitor chair, laying the blue Strat across his knees. You know, he said slowly, people think rock and roll is just hands and noise. But it's not. It's what's left when they take everything else from you and you still hear something inside. I can't even hold a pick, Ethan said bitterly. Look at me. Ozzy leaned forward. I've forgotten lyrics on stage, he said. I've fallen over monitors. I've lost friends. Lost myself. Lost my mind, almost. You know what never left? Ethan looked at him, waiting. The riff, Ozzy said quietly. That pulse. They can mess up your body, kid. But they don't own your fire. Ethan clenched his jaw. My fire is locked in fingers that don't listen. Maybe, Ozzy said. Or maybe it's time to light it somewhere else. Ethan scoffed. Easy for you to say. You're Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy pointed the dusty guitar at him like an accusation. I'm a screw-up that somehow survived. Big difference. And I didn't come in here by accident. Yes, you did, Ethan said. Sure, Ozzy replied. And I accidentally walked into a room with Sabbath, Kiss, and Zeppelin on the wall, and a kid whose life got crushed under a stage he never got to own. The universe doesn't do that many coincidences in one afternoon, trust me. His phone buzzed. Sophie again, he hit accept. Ozzy, where are you? She began. In the right place, he cut in. Listen, love, I need a favor, she sighed. I swear, if you've wandered into someone's room again, we're going to get sued. Relax, Ozzy said. No lawyers. Just destiny. He stood, pacing slowly past the posters. I need a line to an old friend, he continued. Sophie frowned on the other end. Who? Ozzy looked up at the Ace Frehley poster. The spaceman, he said. Calling the spaceman, Ethan's heart stopped. No, he whispered. No, don't joke about that. Ozzy hit speaker. Sophie, dig out that number. You know the one. If you don't have it, social media does. World's noisy, but legends don't hide. Ace Frehley? She said, incredulous. You want me to get Ace Frehley to come to a hospital because you got lost? Ozzy grinned. Not for me. He glanced at Ethan, for him. There was a pause. Then the sound of Sophie typing, muttering, Ozzy, even if I get through. There's no guarantee. Tell him, Ozzy said, voice suddenly firm. There's a young guitarist whose hands got taken away, but his room is a shrine to the spaceman. Tell him I'm here. Tell him I think this kid deserves a sign that rock and roll doesn't abandon its own. His tone left no room for argument. Sophie exhaled. Okay, I'll try. And Sophie, Ozzy added, yes. Book a couple of vans. For what? Amps, cabs, lights, wires, make a mess. We're borrowing the 3rd floor for a show. Sophie went silent. Only you, she said finally, would schedule a concert in a hospital and call it therapy. Music's the best medicine they can't bill insurance for, Ozzy replied. Hanging up, Ethan stared at him. You're serious, he whispered. Ozzy sat back down. Kid, he said, I've done a lot of stupid things in my life. Believing in you isn't one of them. Ace Descend's word spreads fast in a hospital, faster when someone says, Ozzy Osbourne just ordered amplifiers. By the time the sun dipped behind the glass towers of Los Angeles, a strange electricity buzzed through Cedars-Sinai. Nurses whispered in clusters. Security looked confused but oddly cooperative. A kid from the oncology ward peeked around the corner wearing a Sabbath shirt 3 sizes too big. On the street below, a black SUV rolled up. Then another, and then he stepped out, Ace Frehley. Leather jacket, sunglasses, hair falling around his shoulders. No makeup, but still unmistakably the man who once painted the sky on his face and turned guitars into rocket ships. A few people clapped. A nurse dropped her clipboard. A security guard muttered, You've got to be kidding me. Ace just smirked. Where is he? He asked the nearest staffer. They led him to the elevators. Ozzy was waiting on the 3rd floor as the doors opened. You took your time, spaceman, Ozzy said. You dragged me out of my day off. Ace shot back. Better be good. Ozzy nodded toward room 347. It's more than good. Ace stepped inside. The first contact, Ethan heard the footsteps first. He'd spent the last hour thinking this was some surreal dream his brain conjured to cope. Ozzy Osbourne showing up lost? Talking about Ace? Calling in gear? Then the door opened. Ozzy entered. Behind him walked the man on Ethan's wall. For a moment, Ethan's brain stopped. No posters. No videos, no 10-year-old fanboy fantasies, just Ace Frehley. In his doorway, Ethan's throat closed. Ace looked around the room. His gaze landed on his own poster. The Kiss memorabilia, the homemade Voltage Boys banner, the dusty Strat. Then he saw Ethan. You must be Ethan, Ace said. Ethan tried to speak. What came out was a cracked sound. Ace crossed the room without hesitation and knelt in front of Ethan's wheelchair so their eyes were level. Slowly, he extended his hand. It shook on Ethan's side. Not from nerves, because nerves were partly gone. Because control was fractured. Signals broken. Ethan forced his hand up. Ace didn't flinch at the tremor. He took Ethan's hand in both of his as if receiving something sacred. People think guys like me are all about big solos and fireworks, Ace said softly. But the real difference between a guitarist and a legend isn't skill. Ethan swallowed. What is it then? Refusing to let anyone else write your ending, Ace said. A tear slid down Ethan's cheek at that, finally cracking the surface. I can't play, Ethan whispered. I can't feel my fingers the same. I can't stand. I don't know who I am without a guitar. Ace glanced back at Ozzy. Ozzy just nodded. Then, Ace said, turning back, maybe we remind you. Room 347 becomes a stage, the hallway outside filled with rolling cases, small amps, a couple of cabs, a modest light rig, enough to get them yelled at, but not enough to blow out the building. Nurses exchanged looks that said, this is absolutely insane, and I'm absolutely not stopping it. Sophie stood with a clipboard, arguing with a supervisor in a strangely polite way that meant she'd already won. Inside, Ace unsnapped a case. The room seemed to hold its breath. He lifted out a guitar Ethan had only ever seen in photos and grainy videos. A white Les Paul, with the scars of 1,000 shows. Ethan's eyes widened. "Is that?" Ace smiled. "Yeah, she's been around." He plugged into a small amp by the bed. Ozzy in the corner picked up a harmonica from his pocket, checking the key with casual familiarity. Staff gathered in the doorway. A kid in another wheelchair rolled closer. A doctor leaned against the frame, arms folded, pretending not to be emotionally invested and failing. Ace turned back to Ethan. "You remember how it feels," he said, "even if your hands don't." He gently lifted the white Les Paul and placed it across Ethan's lap. The weight of it, the coolness of the metal, the curve against his legs. His fingertips twitched on instinct, reaching for strings they could barely press. Something inside Ethan roared awake. Ace rested his own hands over Ethan's, guiding them slowly into position on the fretboard. "Don't worry about sound," Ace said. "Just remember." Ethan closed his eyes. He saw his old garage. The posters. His friends tuning up, cheap amps buzzing, his mother yelling about the noise. His father pretending to be annoyed while hiding a smile. His fingers shook, one string rang out, crooked, buzzing, imperfect. Perfect. His breath hitched. Ace dialed in the amp. Played a slow, dirty, unmistakably Ace riff, careful not to use any lyrics or specific lines that lawyers hated, but every note dripping with his signature swing and cosmic swagger. Ozzy joined in with the harmonica, weaving a rough melody around the guitar, making the hospital room feel less like a ward and more like the backstage of some cosmic show. The fluorescent lights seemed softer. The beeping monitors blended into rhythm. For the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel like a patient. He felt like part of a band. Fire Without Burning Ace glanced at Ethan with a mischievous glint. "You ever see me do the smoking guitar bit?" he asked. Ethan's eyes widened. "Only on video. My favorite thing." "I always wanted to see it live," Ace chuckled. "Well, they won't let me burn down the hospital. But I brought something." He signaled one of his crew. A small, controlled effect rig was clipped safely, tested thrice, cleared by an anxious facilities manager who finally whispered, "Okay, but if anything catches fire, I didn't see this." Ace positioned himself near the foot of the bed. Ethan watched, heart pounding. Ace hit a note, then another, and then, with a practiced motion, engaged the effect. From the end of the guitar, a tight column of harmless controlled flame shot up, bright, fierce, gone in a breath. The room gasped. The kid in the doorway squealed with joy. The nurse with the clipboard clapped a hand over her mouth, half in shock, half in delight. Ethan's face crumpled, not in fear, but in awe. For 1 second, he wasn't the broken man in the hospital. He was the kid with the cheap Strat. Staring at videos on a cracked laptop, dreaming, Ace stepped closer. "You see that?" he said. "They took your body out for a while. They never touched that fire." Ethan let the tears come. Ozzy moved to his side and spoke quietly. "You don't stop being a musician because your hands change," he said. "Music's not in your spine. It's not in your fingers. It's in the part of you that refused to die after the doctors read out the bad news." Ethan shook his head, choking. "What if I never play like before?" "Good," Ozzy said. "Then you'll play like after." The gift when the last chord faded, when the staff slowly drifted back to their rounds, when the hallway's whispers became real life again, the room settled into a soft, sacred quiet. Ace lifted the white Les Paul from Ethan's lap as if to pack it away. Ethan's eyes followed it, full of reluctant goodbye. Ace paused. "Ozzy," he said without turning. "Yeah? You remember the first time someone believed you were worth a risk?" Ace asked. Ozzy's eyes softened. "Too well." Ace took a breath, then turned back and laid the Les Paul back across Ethan's lap. Ethan stared. I can't," he stammered. You can't just, "I can," Ace said. "And I am. This is yours now." Ethan shook his head furiously, tears blurring everything. No, this guitar is history. It belongs in a museum or on stage or..." Ace leaned in. "This guitar belongs," he said firmly, "with someone who refuses to let an ending be written for him. Right now, that's you." Ozzy smiled slowly. Consider it a contract, kid, he added. Not to be perfect. Just not to quit, Ethan sobbed openly now, hands trembling over the strings. I can't promise I'll ever play like before, he whispered. Promise you'll try, Ace said. Ethan nodded. I promise. Why Ozzy stayed after the room emptied. After the last staff member drifted away, Ozzy and Ace stayed a moment longer with Ethan. The three of them wrapped in the low hum of machines and the quiet buzz of a miracle that didn't make headlines. Why'd you really do this? Ace asked Ozzy quietly when Ethan glanced down at the guitar, overwhelmed. Ozzy leaned against the window, looking out at the city lights. Because once, he said, I was a disaster waiting to be discarded. And someone decided I wasn't trash. They made a call. Gave me a shot. I don't even know if they understood what it meant. He looked back at Ethan. I've buried friends. I've seen talent crushed under bottles, needles, bad luck. We can't fix everything. But if we can stop one kid from believing his story is over, that's worth more than another gold record. Ace nodded. I didn't come for charity, he said. I came because I saw that room on my screen. That poster. That banner. I saw belief. That's rare. Ethan looked up at them both. I won't waste this, he said softly. You better not, Ozzy said. I expect tickets. 6 months later. 6 months after room 347 became a stage, Ozzy's phone buzzed. A video link from Sophie. Remember Ethan? She wrote. Ozzy tapped. The video opened on a familiar face. Ethan sat in his wheelchair in his small apartment. The hospital gown was gone, replaced by a black Voltage Boys shirt. His hair was tied back, his eyes clearer. Hey Ozzy, hey Ace, Ethan said into the camera. Still here. Still wired together. He lifted his right hand. It shook. Slowly. He pressed his thumb and finger together around a pen. I couldn't even hold this a few months ago, he said with a crooked grin. Now I can sign my own name again. Lucky for the autographs I'm gonna give, right? He winked, the screen cut. Another clip. Ethan in a rehab center, hand strapped into a device delivering tiny electrical pulses. His face twisted with effort. A therapist encouraged him. He laughed between gritted teeth. You guys told me fire doesn't die, he said over the montage. So I keep feeding it. Then the last clip. Ethan again in his apartment. On his lap, the white Les Paul. His fingers fumbled clumsily over the strings. One note pause, second note pause, third buzzing, fourth a hiccup, nearly losing it. Then sound. 4 shaky notes. Not smooth, not fast. Not stage ready, but real. Ethan looked into the camera with glassy eyes. This, he said, isn't much to someone else. But to me, this is a comeback. This is hope. You two and that day in room 347 did more than give me a guitar. You gave me a reason to keep showing up. He smiled. Tell Ace the Voltage Boys aren't done. Ozzy watched the whole thing in silence. So did Ace when he got his copy. Neither of them said much afterward. They didn't need to. 1 year later, the return of the Voltage Boys. 1 year after the hospital jam, a cheap banner hung outside a small downtown club. Tonight only, the Voltage Boys back from the edge. Inside, the stage was small. The PA wasn't perfect. The lights flickered when the bass amp kicked. But the place was packed. Friends, family, strangers who'd seen a video online. Nurses from Cedars-Sinai, a quiet doctor from neurology standing at the back. A kid in a Sabbath shirt. Backstage, if you could call the narrow hallway backstage, Ethan sat in his chair, the white Les Paul resting across his knees. His fingers were still weaker than before, movements still intentional, practiced. His bandmates hovered nearby. You sure? The drummer asked. No, Ethan admitted. But let's do it anyway. He rolled out. The room erupted. He blinked in the light, swallowing the lump in his throat. There near the bar he saw 2 familiar silhouettes. Sunglasses, long hair, a grin. Ozzy raised a glass of water for once in salute. Ace gave a small 2-fingered salute of his own. Ethan leaned toward the mic. My name is Ethan Cross, he said, voice shaking but strong. This is the Voltage Boys. A year ago I thought my story ended under a pile of metal. But some legends walked into my hospital room and refused to let that be my final chord. He glanced at the white Les Paul. So tonight, this is for them. And for anybody who thinks they're done. His fingers found the first chord. Not perfect, but loud. The crowd roared. Ozzy felt a familiar sting behind his eyes. Ace just smiled, proud and quiet. On a modest stage in a modest club, the sound that came out wasn't technically flawless, wasn't stadium tight, but it was pure. It was resurrection. It was proof. Rock and roll hadn't died. It had simply moved into a new body. Final words to the viewer, narrator voice softens. So if you're watching this, the voice says, remember Ethan. Remember room 347. Remember a lost legend in a white hallway who followed a poster and found a broken guitarist with an unbroken soul. Remember Ace laying a lifetime of history across a kid's lap. Remember that sometimes the greatest solos are played inside the heart before the hands ever catch up. A beat. Now your part. If you felt something during this story. If you still believe rock and roll heals. If you love Ozzy Osbourne, Ace Frehley, and every kid who refuses to let life write their ending. Subscribe to Voices of Darkness right now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. I'd like this video. Share it with one friend who loves real stories. Prove your love for Ozzy by making this story travel further than any hospital corridor. Because true darkness is not the absence of light. It's the stage before the spotlight hits. And as long as one soul refuses to give up the music inside them, rock and roll will never die.